Here's a horror story idea for you. A group of friends moves into an old apartment building. It's got creepy vibes, but the rent is cheap and the apartments are huge. One by one, their friends begin to vanish, only to reappear inside the mirrors of their own apartments, screaming silently as they try to escape. Backstory: the building used to house an experimental psychiatric facility. B3 was sealed off after a failed treatment caused patients to mentally fracture and become trapped in mirror loops, alternate realities that feed on your fears. Ending: only one friend escapes, but when they return upstairs, no one remembers the missing people. Even worse, their reflection in the mirror starts to behave on its own. I have a confession to make. I used to think my therapist was crazy. She'd talk about how the mind can trick us into thinking things are real even if they aren't. But now I know she was right. It's because of this place. 4 of my best friends and I were dying to move out of our parents' houses and start fresh in the city. And we found the perfect spot: a newly renovated 3-bedroom apartment in an old building in the Lower East Side. It had exposed brick, giant windows, and a doorman. It was too good to be true. The first night we were there, I woke up to what sounded like screams in the middle of the night. Then I started hearing strange noises throughout the apartment. My friends thought it was just the building settling. It's an old structure after all, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. We explored every inch of the apartment, even venturing into the basement where we found an old rusted elevator. We decided to check it out. The doors opened to a cold, dim corridor with dozens of doors lining the hallway. But when we checked the numbers, they didn't match any of the floors on the building's floor plans. We found an elevator button labeled B3. Curious, we pressed it and the elevator began to descend. As the doors opened, we found ourselves in the same dark corridor, except this time we were even deeper underground. And that's when we noticed the faces staring back at us from behind the doors. At first, we thought they were just pictures hung crookedly on the walls. But then we realized each face was an eerie replica of one of us. What the hell was going on here? We turned off our phones to kill the bright screen light and walked down the hallway, noticing more faces along the way. Some familiar, some not so much. They looked distorted, like funhouse mirror versions of ourselves. Some faces were happy, others angry. One looked terrified. We didn't stick around to see if any of them moved. Then we spotted a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. Light spilled out onto the floor, giving us a chance to look inside without being seen. We peered through the crack and gasped at what we saw. It was our apartment. Well, sort of. The furniture was all the same, but it was darker, colder, and instead of hanging artwork, there were photographs of us plastered to the walls, some posed, some candid. There were even pictures of us as kids. How did this place have those? One of my friends, let's call him David, cautiously opened the door and stepped inside. His face, pale in the dim light, stared back at him from the mirror on the wall. He called out for me, his voice echoing strangely in the cavernous space. And the reflection mimicked him, word for word. He tried to walk past his mirror self, but as he did, the reflection moved too, stepping closer until it touched his shoulder. He screamed, stumbling back and knocking over a chair. That's when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A knock on the door, someone clearing their throat. We froze, listening intently, but there was nothing. No one was outside the door. David slowly turned back to the mirror, expecting to see his doppelganger gone. Instead, it was smiling. It mouthed something, but it was too far away to hear. It took a step toward him and he screamed again, running to the other side of the room. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But there was only one door. We had to get him out of there. I grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the exit. We ran down the hall and back to the elevator, racing against whatever was pursuing us. As the doors closed, I heard footsteps pounding on the elevator shaft as if something was trying to get out. We descended to the ground floor, raced through the lobby, and burst out onto the street. My heart pounded in my chest. Whatever was in that basement wanted out. I could feel it. I told my friends we needed to get out of that building. It wasn't safe. They didn't believe me, though. They went back upstairs while I waited in the taxi. I told them to call me as soon as they got home. When the call didn't come, I shrugged it off. My friends loved that apartment. Why would they leave? But 2 days later, I got a call from the police. They told me to come to the apartment. They'd gotten a welfare check call from a neighbor who hadn't seen my friends in a few days. When I got to the apartment, the doorman told me my friends had moved out. He said he hadn't seen them for several days. I asked him to let me in, but he said the apartment was probably in a state of disarray and it wouldn't do for me to come in. That didn't make sense. My friends hadn't even unpacked. I fished out my keys and unlocked the door myself. The apartment was dark and cold. The air was stale, like it hadn't been occupied in weeks. On the coffee table was a half-written note. I bent down to read it. It said, "Call 911. We need help." That's when I heard a knock on the door. I jumped, startled, and dropped the paper. I told whoever was out there to come in. Standing in the doorway was a man in a suit. He introduced himself as a representative from the landlord and asked if I had found someone else to sublet the apartment because the landlord was having trouble renting it. After me and my friends moved out, he said, "What are you talking about? You haven't left yet." I looked over my shoulder and saw the door behind me. It had vanished. In its place was a mirror. I turned back to the landlord, but he was gone. I rushed to the mirror, desperate to see my friend's reflections, but all I saw staring back at me was myself. And that's when I noticed the smile creeping across my face, the exact same smile that had appeared on the face in the basement. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped in my own apartment, except it wasn't my apartment anymore. It was one of the many mirror loops in the basement. Whatever was controlling these reflections had taken my friends. But before it erased them from this reality, they had somehow managed to send out a warning. And I hope that whoever's reading this can take my friend's story to heart before it's too late. The worst part is that it's already too late for me. I may be stuck here forever,